Welcome back, children. Today we are going to start with the third chapter of your civics lesson, standard 7th, how the state government works. Children, India is the largest democracy. It is a huge country which has 28 states and 8 union territories. How is this large country governed or administered? Okay, there has to be a proper system of governance, yes, so that to avoid chaos in the country. So let us look into how our country is governed. Children, as I mentioned, there are 28 states and 8 union territories. So let us have a look at which are the union territories of a country. Recently formed is Ladakh. We have Jammu and Kashmir. Presently it is a union territory, but soon it will become a state. Chandigarh, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, and Daman and Diu, Lakshadweep, Puducherry, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay, so these are our 8 union territories. Children, let us take an example of a school and see how it is administered. Let me ask you a question. Who is the head of the institution of a school? Yes, the principal. Now, can he look into each and every class in the school, look into the entire administration of the school? No, it is not possible for a single person to do it. So he requires the help of other people. And who are those other people? The teachers, who go into every class and look into the classwork. Then the teachers also require certain more people to help them. Then there are peons, okay, there are maids to look into the cleanliness. So the entire system works. Lot of people are required in the administration of a school. So similarly, we look into the administration of a country. So children, how is our country governed? Yes, in our country there are 3 levels of government. We have a government in the center, which is also called as the central government or union government. Then we have a government in every state. I told you we have 28 states and union territories. The union territories are governed and looked after by the central government. And then we have local government in the villages. So these are the ways our entire country is governed. Okay. We have a government in the center called the central government or union government, and the responsibility of the central government is to take care of countrywide issues, to look into the progress and security of the country. And who are the people who are looking into the central government? Yes, we have the president, the prime minister, the vice president, then the cabinet ministers, then the ministers of state, deputy minister. There are various people who look into the governance and administration of the entire country, issues related to the entire country. Children, as I told you and gave you an example of a school, I told you that the principal can't reach to every classroom and solve their problems. So in order to make sure that everything is looked after, he gives that work to the teachers. So similarly, the central government also cannot look into all the issues of the country. So the administration has been further divided, and every state has its own government which takes care of the local and regional issue. So today we are going to learn how the state government works. So children, what are the responsibilities of the state government? Yes, it looks into the agricultural part of in that state, the prisons, the police, the healthcare, all the other local issues that are there within the state. Okay, they only have to take care of the responsibilities that are within that state. Okay, so that is the responsibility of the state government. As I mentioned earlier, India has 28 states and 8 union territories. Now, out of that 8 union territories, 6 union territories are directly under the control of the central government, whereas 2 other union territories, that is Delhi and Puducherry, work like a state. Okay. Now, let us look into the functioning of the state. Every state in India has a Vidhan Sabha or a legislative assembly. Only few states in India have another house called as a Vidhan Parishad or legislative council. Okay, so A state which has only one house of legislature, it is called as unicameral legislature, and the state which has two houses of legislature, that is Vidhan Sabha or Legislative Assembly, and Vidhan Parishad, that is Legislative Council, is called as bicameral legislature. So remember children, bi means two houses and uni means one house. Now children, let us look into this diagram and you will see which are the states which have two houses of legislature, that is both Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Parishad, that is Legislative Assembly and Legislative Council. So you can see here, starting from top, we have Jammu Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Maharashtra. They have two houses of legislature, that is why it is called as bicameral legislature, and the other states have Vidhan Sabha only, so it is called as unicameral legislature. They only have a legislative assembly. So now children, let us see who are the people who are in the Vidhan Sabha and Vidhan Parishad and how are they elected, and let's look into the working of the state government. Children, before we go ahead, let's recap again. Every state in India has a legislative assembly. It is also called as Vidhan Sabha, and these members are directly elected through the process of election. And the Vidhan Parishad, some states have Vidhan Parishad, this is also called as Legislative Council, and these members are indirectly elected. Now people who are elected to the Vidhan Sabha, they are called as MLAs, Member of Legislative Assembly, and people who are representing the Vidhan Parishad, they are called as Member of Legislative Council. Now, how are the members of the Legislative Assembly in each state chosen? Now, for that, each state is divided into small units called constituencies. Now, these are divided for the purpose of election on the basis of the population of that state. For example, if we take Gujarat, how many assembly constituencies are there? 182. That means the entire Gujarat is divided into 182 constituencies. Okay, so this is the first thing that we do when to elect the members of the Legislative Assembly. Elections are held. Now for that election, each state is divided into small units called constituencies, and this number keeps varying from state to state. You can see Gujarat has 182, Delhi has 70 seats. Why Delhi has only 70? Because it's a small area depending on the population. Then you can see Karnataka, it has 224 seats. Madhya Pradesh, big state, it has 230 seats. Okay, and then you can see Goa, again a small, which has only 40 seats. So according to that population of that area, the entire state is divided into small units called constituencies, and these constituencies are only for the purpose of election. To choose the members of the Legislative Assembly, elections are held. Now, for the purpose of election, each state is divided into small units called constituencies. Now, here I have taken up an example of Maharashtra. You can see this is Maharashtra, and see the entire state has been divided into small units called constituencies. And how many seats are there? There are 288 assembly seats. Okay, so the entire state, for the election of the Legislative Assembly or Vidhan Sabha, this entire state has been divided into small units called constituencies, and Maharashtra has 288. Now these constituencies depend on the population of the state. As I told you, some have only 70 seats, some have 40. That depends on the area of the state and the population of the state. So children, you know, in our country we have a multi-party system and we have various parties in our country. You can see here we have BJP, we have the Congress, we have the Aam Aadmi Party, we have the Shiv Sena, Trinamool Congress. Okay, so there are various parties. Now children, this is the state of Maharashtra, which has 288 constituencies. Now in each constituencies, representatives from various parties stand for election to get the post, become a member of the Legislative Assembly, and they are also called as MLAs. Now each of them, all the parties will put up their candidates, like one will be BJP, the other will be from Congress or Aam Aadmi or some other party. So all of them will stand for election from each of these 288 assembly seats or constituencies in Maharashtra. So the people of Maharashtra will vote for their representatives from each of these constituencies, and whoever gets the majority vote becomes the member of the Legislative Assembly or MLAs. So from each constituency, one representative is elected by the people. As I told you earlier, that each political party puts up its candidate from each of these constituencies to fight the election. People vote to elect their representatives, okay, but only one representative is chosen from each of these constituencies. Now representative which gets the highest number of votes, okay. So you will see here, it is not that all the MLAs will belong to the same party. In some constituency, some other party will win, members of that other party will win. But here you can see in this case that I have shown you here, majority of the candidates which have won are from which party? Yes, BJP. So now there are more BJP representatives from Maharashtra, so they will be in majority, and these representatives will sit in the Legislative Assembly or Vidhan Sabha and form the government because they are in majority. Children, let's look at this table to understand how the government is formed. As you know, Maharashtra has 288 seats. Now for any party to form a government requires half of 288. That means if we divide it by 2, we get 144. So any party, if it has to be in majority and form the government, must have this number of 144. Now this is a table where we see BJP has got 105 seats. Does it have 144? Can it form the government? No, it cannot form the government. It must have 144 seats. Now how will it form the government? Now BJP can take the help of another party, request them to join them in the government, and if both together get this number of 144 or more, then they can form the government. Okay, so here we see that BJP is joined with Shiv Sena and they have got this number of 161, which is more than 144, so they can claim to form the government. Now such type of government, when it alliances with other parties, is called a coalition government. When one or more parties join to form a government, it is called a coalition government. Okay, so here no party has won, so it is a coalition government. If BJP had got 144, then it did not need the help of Shiv Sena. It could have formed its own government. Then that government would have been called as a majority government. Okay, now the other members were chosen from the constituencies, yes, who have not got the numbers, but they still have been elected. All these members like INC, Congress, NCP and others, they now will sit in the assemblies. They will also sit in the legislative assemblies. They will also be called as MLAs, but they will be called as the opposition party. So one will have the ruling party or the majority party, and the other will be the opposition party. Now children, to understand the election results better, just have a look. We have, suppose 100 seats or 100 constituencies, and there are three parties fighting for election: party A, party B, and party C. Each of them put up their candidates. Now after the polling is over, voting is over, we see party A has got 60 seats, party B has got 30 seats, and party C has got 10 seats. Now as I told you, to form a government, what is required? Half of the seats is required. That means 50 seats are required to form a government. Now here you can see party A has got 60 seats, so it is more than 50, so they can form the government. So in case of this, it is simple majority. They are won by majority. They do not need the help of any other party, and they can form the government on their own. Now, so that is called as absolute majority. One with more than 50 seats is called as absolute majority. Now look at the second scenario. Suppose party A gets 40, party B gets 35, party C gets 25. Now nobody can form the government. Okay, so if it is less than 50, what will it do? It might take the help of party B or party C. They will both join together and form a government. Okay, and such type of government is called coalition government. So if you are asked what is a coalition government, when two or more political parties come together to form a government, is known as a coalition government. After the elections, all the elected MLAs will sit in the Legislative Assembly. Now this is the picture of the Legislative Assembly. You can see this is the seating arrangement. Okay, so the party which has a large number of MLAs becomes the ruling party or the majority, and they will form the government. So you can see the majority is sitting on one side, and all the other elected MLAs who have not got the majority become the opposition. Okay, and where is this Legislative Assembly? The Legislative Assembly is found in the capital city of every state. Okay, now once the majority, all these MLAs sit in the Legislative Assembly, now what will they do? All of them will now vote and elect or choose their leader, who becomes the chief minister. The elected MLAs of the majority party choose their leader, who becomes the chief minister. Now after the chief minister is chosen, then the chief minister among his elected MLAs will choose some of them and give them additional charge, which is called as portfolio. Okay, who he thinks are good in their work. So to one he will give agriculture, to look after the agriculture of the state. To the other, looking after the law and order, the police department to him. To the third one he'll give health. Fourth one, prison. Like this he will choose ministers and give them additional charge. So these ministers along with the chief minister becomes the council of ministers. Now all do not become ministers. Some of them remain as MLAs, and they all sit together in the Legislative Assembly. So some MLAs are also appointed as ministers. Okay, and they have a dual responsibility to work as a minister plus work as an MLA. How is an MLA? He's been chosen from one particular constituency. You can see here, this is Maharashtra with 288 constituencies. So he must be chosen from any one of these constituencies. So once he is elected and sits in the Legislative Assembly, he has to look after his constituency. Why does he have to look after his constituency? Because if he doesn't look after his constituency, the people of that constituency will not vote for him again. Okay, so he needs to work for these people who are living from where he has been voted, and plus he's been given an extra charge. He's been given a portfolio. Whichever portfolio he is given, he has to work for that, whether it's agriculture, health, or police. Okay, now the head of the state is the governor. Okay, and the head of the government is the chief minister. How is this governor elected? No, he is not elected. He is appointed by the President of India for a term of 5 years. Okay, Once the chief minister is chosen and the chief minister chooses his own council of ministers, then the appointment is done by the governor. They are called by the governor, they are given the oath, and that leads to the formal formation of the government. Now, all the MLAs in the Legislative Assembly, that means they are the majority or opposition party, among them they vote and elect a Speaker of the House. Now you can see the Speaker is sitting in the center. Now what is the work of the Speaker? He looks after the proceedings and meetings of the Legislative Assembly. Whenever there is a discussion or debate, he sees that it goes on smoothly and records each and every detail of what is going on in the assembly, what discussions were taking place, who answered, what was the answer. Everything is a record maintainer. You can see these are the people who help the speaker in maintaining the records. Legislative Assembly is a place where all the MLAs, all the elected MLAs meet. Okay, whether he's from the majority or the opposition, they all meet and sit in this hall and they discuss and debate various issues regarding the state. So children, let us see how discussions and debates takes place in the assembly. So you can see here the first MLA who belongs to the opposition party, he gets up and speaks that in my constituency of Akhanda Gaon, during the last 3 weeks, there were 15 deaths because of diarrhea. I think it is a shame that this government has not been able to check the situation of a simple problem like diarrhea while proclaiming itself to be a champion of technology. I would call the attention of the minister in charge of health to take immediate measures to control the situation. This is what the first MLA said. What about the second? He is also from the opposition. He stood up and said, my question is, why are government hospitals in such a bad situation? Why is the government not appointing proper doctors and other medical staff in the district? I would also like to know how the government plans to deal with this situation. Okay, the third MLA, who is again from the opposition, he says, my constituency of Tolpatti has a serious shortage of water. Women travel up to 3 to 4 kilometers to collect water. How many tankers have been put into service to supply water? How many wells and ponds have been cleaned and disinfected? Now, when 3 questions have been raised, one is for diarrhea, the other is for hospitals, and the other for shortage of water. So the fourth MLA, who is from the ruling party, he says, I think my colleagues are exaggerating the problem. The government has taken enough steps to control the situation. Water tankers have been put into service, ORS packets have been distributed, and the government is trying to do everything possible to help the people. Okay, and once he finishes this, again another MLA who's from the opposition, he stands up and says, we have a very poor facility in our hospital. There are hospitals that do not have a doctor. No medical staff has been appointed for the last few years. In another hospital, the doctor has gone on a long leave. This is a shame. I think the situation is going from bad to worse. How are we going to ensure that ORS packets reach all families in the affected areas? So now the minister who is in charge has to answer to these questions. So he says the opposition members are unnecessarily blaming the government. The previous government did not pay attention to the sanitation. We have now taken up the drive to clear the garbage that has been lying around the years. So you see, these kinds of debates and discussions take place in the Legislative Assembly, and opposition plays a very important role because it keeps the ruling party or the government in the check and highlights the issues of the state so that they don't become like a dictator and they keep doing the good work for the state. So you see, children, in the Legislative Assembly, the MLAs are given the freedom to tell their opinion, give suggestions to a problem, raise questions about the issues, and then also put forward the demands of the people and remind the government of their work. So this is the role of the opposition party. They keep the government on their toes and prevents them from acting like a dictator. Okay, now the ruling party, the minister who is in charge, to whom the questions are raised, he must answer these questions and ensure that proper steps have been taken to solve the problem. So the government needs to take these steps to solve the problem and are answerable to the people, because the people of the state have elected them. Okay. Soon after the debate and discussions in the Legislative Assembly, the concerned minister calls his own department and tells them to take necessary steps to solve the problem immediately. Okay. The government also holds a press conference to explain the measures taken by them to tackle the problem. The concerned minister also visits the village and he meets a number of families in the village who have lost their relatives. He goes to the hospitals and looks into the patients who are there, and he also tells his department to have a committee to look into the problems of sanitation, make more toilets in that area. Okay, and he says that he is going to appoint a health worker who will look into these issues and report to the government and ensure that proper sanitation and health facilities are brought about in this village. So in this way, the government of the state works and to look into the issues that have been raised in the Legislative Assembly. Children, now you must remember that each and every work done by any department of the government has to be approved by all the MLAs of the Legislative Assembly. So they have to agree to it. Okay, it has to be agreed by all the MLAs of the Legislative Assembly. So children, you see, since the people have elected the government, they have the right to know about the steps taken by the government. And how will they know? Yes, through newspapers, through television, through other media, they come to know what steps the government has taken to solve the issues. And how can the people communicate to the government? It is through these mediums only that the people can express their problems and opinions, through newspapers, through television medium. Okay, all this is the way that the government knows what the people want, and then only they can solve the problem. Children, now that you know how the state government works, let us look into the storyboard that is given in your textbook. Okay, you can see in the first picture, this girl is saying, hey, look at this. It says that there is a water shortage in our state and people are falling sick. Okay, so another one says, in my village people were found to be drinking unclean water, streams have dried up and so have tanks. In the worst affected areas, villagers have been carrying water across great distances. So they say people at the district headquarters of Patalpuram receive water supply once in 3 days. The district hospital there is overflowing with patients, and a large number of whom are children with acute diarrhea. Okay, so these are the things that they're reading in the newspaper. So on again we go ahead with that storyboard. We see on the TV news they said 10 people have died from diarrhea. Is that possible? Can anyone really die from it? Who knows? Just hope I don't get it. That afternoon they are back from school, so my mother said that they have iced drink from the market. She gave one of her lectures this morning. You have to be responsible for your health, Srini. They said. And then suddenly they are stopped by a policewoman. Okay, and she says this road is blocked due to the rally. They have given out the MLA's residence. So you know now what was an MLA, member of the Legislative Assembly, and how is he elected. So really, why has he done something? Haha, they seem more angry about what he hasn't done. Okay, and then we see a spokesperson who is very loud, and we demand that the authorities have immediate action to bring the public health situation under control. Our MLA must be responsible for this. What a loud voice he has. He must be a leader or something. Shh, I saw him on TV too. He is a member of the opposition party. So now you know who becomes the opposition party and how the government works. Okay, so through debates and discussions the government works. It need not be debate and discussions in the Legislative Assembly, but it can be in such a way where they go in on the Gherao, that President Gherao means surround his house and make him do the work. Okay, or through newspapers, through mediums. So this is the way the government comes to know about the problem of the people, and they take steps to solve it. So finally, children, we have come to the end of this chapter, and let us recap how the government works once it has been formed. So the chief minister and his ministers take action to various departments. There are various departments, the health department, public work department. So they, whatever problems comes through those departments, they keep on doing their work. They also answer questions that are asked in the legislative assembly. Also they respond to other mediums like newspaper, media, through press conference. They let the people know what they do. They also make laws to solve the problem. So this is all about how the state government works, and I hope you have liked it. Thank you.